at what price could you go back to a gold standard today without causing deflation? Well, it's a range depending on your inputs. How much gold backing do you want? 20%, 40%, 100%? What's your definition of money? Is it M0, M1? So you gotta fill out those parameters. But using a conservative analysis, using M1 of Europe, China, and the United States, so it's called global M1 with 40% backing, the answer is $10,000 per ounce. So when I project $10,000 gold, it is not a made-up number. I'm not trying to get headlines. I'm not trying to get attention. It's 8th grade math. I know how much gold there is. I know what the money supply is. I know what deflation is. The implied non-deflationary price of gold on very conservative assumptions is $10,000 an ounce. If you want to use global M2 with 100% backing, which I don't recommend, I don't think is needed, but if you did, that number is closer to $50,000 an ounce. So when you hear these prices of gold, they won't happen tomorrow, but in another collapse of the international monetary system, which, by the way, has collapsed 3 times in the past 100 years. That's another thing I say, the international monetary system's heading for a collapse, and people go, oh, that'll never happen. It's happened 3 times in the past 100 years. 1914, by the way, the New York Stock Exchange was closed for 5 months. 5 months, not 5 days. 1939, we all know what happened then, a little thing called World War II, and then restored it with Bretton Woods. And 1971, when President Nixon suspended the redemption of dollars for gold and ended the Bretton Woods standard. Since then, we've sort of muddled through with a dollar standard. In 2010, President Obama tore up the dollar standard to begin the currency wars, which we'll talk about in a minute. So since then, we have no standard. There is no anchor in the international monetary system today. No gold, no dollars, no SDRs. SDRs are around, but they're not the anchor yet. There is no anchor. And I've recently had 2 one-on-one conversations, one with Ben Bernanke, former chairman of the Federal Reserve. Spoke with him in Korea, Seoul, Korea, and the other one was John Lipsky. Spoke to John in New York. John is the only American head of the IMF, and people say, how can that be? Americans are not allowed to head the IMF. It's always a European. What's interesting about that is Bernanke and Lipsky, head of the Fed, head of the IMF, used exactly the same word to describe the international monetary system to me, and the word was incoherent. When they said incoherent, what they meant was what I just said: no anchor, no rules of the game. It's just jump ball currency wars day after day. And no one should be surprised at the volatility. No one should be surprised at the fluctuations. I mean, the dollar strengthens 25% from 2011 to 2015. 25%. That's huge in currency space. Currency space, things are supposed to move, at the 5th decimal place in a day's trading. You don't move 25% in 4 years, but that's what happened. That's what happens in a system that has no anchor. But for those, and I include myself, and I do a lot of this, understand chaos theory and complexity theory, when you see this kind of stuff, the system's getting wobbly and it's about to go flying off into space. It's about to collapse. So it's been 40 years since the last collapse. The tempo seems to be about every 40 years. I'm not saying it's going to happen like clockwork tomorrow. I'm just saying that no one should be surprised if it does. And that's what investors need to prepare for. That's what my book is about. I'm not saying we will have a gold standard. I am saying we might have a gold standard, or we might have a hybrid of special drawing rights, the IMF World Money, and gold. But in every state of the world, gold has got to be valued at $10,000 an ounce or higher. Otherwise, it's deflationary, which is the last thing the world needs. And by the way, Paul Volcker, Ben Bernanke, Christine Lagarde, they understand this. It's not like I figured this out and they haven't figured it out. They just won't talk about it. Because why should they? They're in the paper money business. They're in the confidence business. They're in the credit expansion business. Why should they talk about gold? And they won't. But I talk about it in the book, and I hope you have the opportunity to read it and enjoy it. The second point I make is that the world is not always in a currency war, but when we are, they can last a very long time. What I describe as Currency War I lasted from 1921 to 1936. What I described as Currency War II lasted from 1967 to 1987 with the Louvre Accord following the Paris Accord. Currency War, so one was 15 years, one was 20 years. Currency War III began in 2010. If you go out 15 years, we're looking at 2025 to 2030. The reason currency wars last so long, they have no logical conclusion. They have no logical conclusion. The only way a currency war ends is either the system collapses or you reform the system. You can reform the system as we did at Bretton Woods, or as we did at the Smithsonian Agreement, the Plaza Accord, and the Louvre Accord in the 80s, or you can let the system collapse. as happened in 1914, 1939. So those are your two choices, but they don't end on their own because they just keep going back and forth.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.